My financial planning, this is not that complicated. I can do this.
The Wealth Advocates simplify the financial world and show you how today's events could affect your financial health so you feel confident about your financial future.
Good afternoon, Wealth Advocates Nation. It's great to be back with you. I am here with John Mickelson. I'm Patrick Jenkins, and we are going to talk about some mistakes we've seen made over our 20-plus year of career as financial advisors. John, start us out. What do you see?
The very first one is not defining what you really want. Unclear goals, unclear desires. I think that it's easy, and the most common thing I see when someone comes in and the first time they've met with a financial planner, and this is someone that's completely on their own, what I see is they said, hey, that looks really interesting. I'll put some money in that. I'll put some money in that. They don't go through and say, that doesn't fit my timeline, or I've over allocated in one asset class. They don't look at those aspects. And so making sure you understand what your objectives are and how they relate to what you put your money into. That's a big common mistake that I see.
Yeah, looking down the road, having goals, being clear about those goals, that's a great idea.
What do you want your money to do for you?
I have my one that's my favorite is they see somebody that's been successful, let's just do what they do. That's kind of like going to the grocery store and buying sandwiches because the person in front of you bought sandwiches and they're really thin, so you want to look like them. If they're eating that works for me too. Everybody's financial situation is very different. Yeah. You never know if there was a windfall somewhere in there, like they sold a business or a real estate package and that got them ahead. You don't know if there's this really is acutely pertaining to early savers. They feel like they've got all the time in the world. And the reality is time is the one thing that investing requires to be successful. If you're disciplined like you just talked about, and if I've got a longer horizon and I just keep my eye on the end prize, I will get there. If you're like your neighbor and just spend everything on day one and live life in the now all the time and never save for the future, thinking it worked out for them, it will work out for me, that's usually a recipe for success.
So the other thing I see is in that same topic is like they'll see a famous investor and buy certain things and they want to buy. Well, by the time that famous investor's bought, it's too late.
There's an entire index right now based on certain congressional members. And they'll say, we've got this AI approach to buy exactly what Nancy Pelosi, one of the most successful investors in Congress, buys.
And there's a big difference between the information she has and the information you have.
By the time it gets down to you, there's been a big delay.
Now, that relates to the next one, which is looking at your balance too often. And what that does, it gives you the knee-jerk. It's like when you have the student driver. I've had 5 now that I've taught to drive. It's frightening.
Yes.
And one of the most important things is trying to get them to look down the road. They look at the road right in front of them, and it's a series of jerky corrections. That's people looking at their account balance too often.
And the more analytical-minded ones are the ones that are most susceptible to this. I have a client who writes down his account balance in the morning, writes down his account balance at the end of the trading session, writes down his account balance in the morning, and he does this twice a day every single year, and he's going neurotic.
Yeah.
Because the market moves a lot in the short term, maybe as much as 1% and 2% in a day.
Yeah.
And if you look at just that little pinhole of data to try to make a trajectory projection off the movements of the day, you will go crazy. You will. The market moves a lot in a day and typically moves up in the up direction over decades.
Yeah.
So that's
very
dangerous,
correct.
Very dangerous. The one my favorite one, the one that's emerging, the one I love to hear about the most is a client calling and saying, hey, I heard on TikTok I should. Oh, please tell me more. What they tell you?
It's not just TikTok, it's CNBC
it could be all of it.
And Fox News.
Those are media buy clubs. This sounds really good. And I'm not going to poo-poo ideas. I love brainstorming.
I love what
clients,
call with ideas.
But let's put some research behind it. Let's really look at what does the 10K report, which is their annual forecast, say. What has the history of that stock been? What pitfalls, what proper profitabilities might lie ahead? Mm-hmm. And let's apply that as well. Let's not just dive in because you heard a TikTok.
Yeah. But I do love that when people want to take an interest and really involve themselves in what they're doing and why. Mm-hmm. That's important. But it's also important to have a coach, someone else that can give you
perspective.
perspective.
So in this vein, we should break that down a little bit more. I love brainstorming. If they want to involve themselves in it, great. I love educated clients.
Me too.
Bring the ideas to us. Let's talk about it. Let's really examine it. But just doing it because you saw a 30-second TikTok, probably not, especially from some 22-year-old that is trying to pretend they're a millionaire.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What else you got?
Emotional decisions. And that's the hardest one of all, because, our emotions, we know very well from human behavior, the worst time to make a decision when you're angry or you're scared. Those are the two worst times. You don't want to live in anger, and you don't want to live in fear. You want to live in confidence and in faith of what's going to happen. And I think a lot of times we lose sight of that, because when the crises come, and they will come, they're going to come. In fact, it was funny when Robert Spendlove, our economist, came. He basically said, well, I am an economist, and by nature I'm negative. It's not a question of when it's going to fall. It is going to fall. It may be like 5 years out, but and so he just said, he went with the whole discussion, and then at the end he said, but of all the countries in the world, we're probably in the best one. Of all the states in the United States, we're probably in the best 2 or 3. So it's like all negative, and he was like, oh, but of all those bad things, we're in the best one. So the big thing is to look at the emotion and realize you want to take a step back from making decisions when you're in that realm. And we all get there, all of us. It's part of our human anatomy. So it's important to say that's why a third party, someone else that can give us perspective, is so valuable in the whole thing. And to say, look at the longer perspective. Is this really a problem? And it might be. There are times when you do make changes, but you want to do them based on logic, not based on emotion.
So if emotion is the hardest one of all, like you just said, then taxes are the most complicated.
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts inside of investing, and taxing adds a whole layer of complexity that clouds our decisions a little bit. Should I just cash out my 401k to pay off my car? No, please don't, because you're going to take a massive hit. You're going to have a penalty on top of it. It's as if we didn't even invest for the last 2 years, because we've got to give all that to the government. Or I have this stock, I've had it for a few months, it's gone way up. Should I sell it? Well, is it going to be taxable, first of all? Is it taxed as short-term capital gains, which is income tax rates? Is it taxed as long-term capital gains? Is the state going to take a piece of that? Are your gains such this year that you may have the Obamacare tax jump in?
Yeah.
Boy, that's complicated.
It is.
Should I put it in a Roth? Should I put it in a traditional? All these elements have a tax implication to it. Some of them are incentives by the government to keep more money in your pocket. Some of them are designed to fund the government, and we just have to be aware of that.
Yeah, and there's a flip side to this, and that is, like, I had a situation last year, which was a phenomenal year, where I had the tax report came out, the 1099 came out, and it was twice what it was the previous year.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never had to pay this much in taxes. Yes, but you've never earned this much. And they earned 3 times as much as the prior year. 3 times, that's huge.
Yep.
And so, when we sat down and looked at it, the principle behind it is I'll pay a lot of tax if I earn enough on it. I mean, in other words, I'll always take a return as a superior to the tax. And sometimes I think we get backwards. We're so driven by avoiding tax that we miss the opportunities. We won't sell it for here because we don't want to move over here, but the real opportunity has now passed us by.
Then there's the opportunity for professionals. Some people overestimate their own abilities and underestimate the professionals that can help them out. Give us some insight there.
Well, and it's a little bit of, making my own case for me. But the reality is, I really believe that in most things, you want to specialize. And my example of this is, well, could we grow oranges in Wisconsin? Yeah, we could. We could get greenhouses. You could grow those oranges, and they'd probably cost like $10 each. Why don't we just have cheese made in Wisconsin, and Florida can do the oranges, and they can trade? That's specialization, and it is the foundation of a free market economy. And the bottom line is, there are people that can do it themselves. Should they? Some of them, yes, but a lot of them, no. And the reason I say that is because you need someone that can be paying attention to all the aspects of it, not just 1 or 2 things, and make sure, because when people look at, like, they look at their statement, they see, return and costs. Well, that's very, very rudimentary. You've got to look at what are the tax ramifications, what are the long-term planning, and we're talking about a short period of time. What happens in 5 or 10 years? So using the right person, you always want to say it's leverage. It's just like anything else. If I can spend $10 to make 100, why would I not do that?
You bring up time horizons. I think that's a very acute point. What we want to remind people is investing is a long-term game. In the 90s, when broadband was coming of age and the internet was brought into the stock market, that little vortex created this unique opportunity for people to make a little bit of money on a day, creating day trading. Day trading changed a lot of people's appetite and perspective of the stock market. Instead of being a lot like farming, where they put a seed in the ground and they give it enough time and nourishment to really turn into a beautiful plant, they felt like, hey, I can buy in the morning, I can sell in the afternoon, and can make a couple bucks. It is the single fastest way to go bankrupt now. Buy in the morning, sell in the afternoon, and make a little money in between.
Yeah.
You will go bankrupt doing that every single time. Investing is a long-term game. It is, you got to be in it for the long haul. See our other video on segmenting time horizons of investments, but that's a big part of investing, and understanding that. Not understanding it is a huge mistake.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is we may not be for everyone, but we are here to help.
Yes.
And we can help. And I think that we have a very unique, I love what I do. I tell people all the time, beyond my income. I went to a coaching session with entrepreneurs at one point, and they said, we want to understand why you do what you do. And at the time I was doing real estate development with my dad, which was a great experience. And then I was doing financial planning. And that was kind of the real estate was winding down. And they said, well, if you didn't have to worry about earning a living and you were doing this, what would you spend your time on? I would do financial planning. And I said, to me, it's so rewarding to find solutions and see success over time. So as we do this, we hope that we're a help to those that we serve. And I think we have a very unique and great way to approach things.
Wealth Advocates is an SEC-registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of Wealth Advocates by the SEC, nor does it indicate that Wealth Advocates has attained a particular level of skill or ability. This material prepared by Wealth Advocates is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to serve as a substitute for personalized investment advice or as a recommendation or solicitation of any particular security, strategy, or investment product. Opinions expressed by Wealth Advocates are based on economic or market conditions at the time this material was written. Facts presented have been obtained by sources believed to be reliable. Wealth Advocates, however, cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of such information, and certain information presented here may have been condensed or summarized from its original source. Wealth Advocates does not provide tax or legal advice, and nothing contained in these materials should be taken as tax or legal advice. Please consult with your tax professional regarding your particular situation before implementing any strategies discussed. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Strategic Advocates and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advice may be rendered by Strategic Advocates unless a client service agreement is in place. Strategic Advocates LLC is a registered investment advisor. Please visit our websites at www.wealth-advocates.com or www.strati.co for important disclosures. Securities offered through registered representatives of Creative One Securities, a broker/dealer, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through Strategic Advocates LLC, a registered investment advisor. Strategic Advocates LLC, Wealth Advocates, and Creative One Securities are separate entities. Wealth Advocates is located at 255 South Main Street, Suite 140, Logan, Utah, 84321.